Indian students have broken records for students in the United States for the third year in a row. 268,000 Indian students studying in the United States in 2022. How to be a CEO of an American company, you have to be Indian, because Starbucks and Google and Microsoft and UPS and so many others are run by Indians. I share my story because I'm sure each one of you around the table could tell your story. Maybe growing up and hearing about this place, America, never thinking you would be there, or maybe you always aspired one day to see that or to study there. Or maybe it was the cause or the subject area that you were aspiring to know more about when you learned about a program like the Humphrey Fellows and never thought that you'd be accepted, right? We always think there's somebody better. There always is somebody better. But sometimes life, we get lucky, and sometimes we work hard. And you have been building this bridge that has been extending from India to the United States over the last many decades. By the way, I think a history that is much stronger than not. When the United States advocated for India's independence to the British before the end of World War II, when America launched the Green Revolution together with a newly independent country that helped a country feed itself, and then took the money that India insisted on paying us in rupees and put it back into India in the largest research and educational grant program in the world's history that helped the IITs and other things get started here. When we looked even at the toughest years, there were still the people-to-people ties that you embodied that really built this bridge that, as I describe it, at least from India to the United States, it's like a steel-reinforced, perfectly engineered, beautifully architected bridge. Unfortunately, when it comes to the U.S. to India, for too long, besides some of us that were interested in India, the bridge back has looked a little bit like a rope bridge with missing planks. And so part of my mission is to make sure that America sees the brilliance of India, understands India more, that we equalize this relationship and bring more American students to study here, just as you have, because we have as much to learn from India as India has to learn from us. So the nearly 200 Indian citizens who have been the bridge builders, I want to thank you, because you crossed bravely long before there was a term Indo-Pacific. You were the Indo-Pacific. And it's funny when policymakers in Washington, D.C., I think it was during President Obama's time, said, we're going to pivot away from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Well, I'm from Los Angeles. I was raised looking at the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. The Indo-Pacific is my home. And so for those of us in the United States, and we see so many Indians who came as immigrants, I think about a PhD student at University of California, Berkeley, who was prohibited from becoming a mathematician when he graduated because of discrimination in my country. So instead he went into agriculture in Southern California, was very successful, and then ran for a local judgeship, won it, and then a few years later became the first Asian American, period, to join the United States Congress in 1950s, and opened up the door that now is filled with Indian Americans who, as the joke was, in the old days, you couldn't succeed if you're Indian American in a business. Now to be a CEO of an American company, you have to be Indian, because Starbucks and Google and Microsoft and UPS and so many others are run by Indians that, again, embody what this bridge is all about. But we're not just marking history here tonight. I'd like to think that actively we're also making history. And let me share with you the metrics of that. As we celebrate International Education Week, and a time that we celebrate academic exchange and student exchange, I also want to highlight how we're doing. Because when I came here as ambassador, I said I would work with my brilliant team and would bring visa wait times down, and we would bring the number of visas up. And it's exciting because the just released 2023 Open Doors report showed that Indian students have broken records for students in the United States for the third year in a row. The report indicated there were more than 268,000 Indian students studying in the United States in 2022-23. In fact, Indian students are now a quarter of all students coming from abroad to the United States. And India recently surpassed China to become the largest source of international graduate students, period, in the United States for the first time in more than a decade. This was a surge of admissions from brilliant Indian students, just like you, who applied for programs just as like the one that you did. It increased 63% year on year, the admissions of Indian graduate students to the United States. That is a tremendous accomplishment. But this is more than numbers. As I said, it's not just about the quantity, it's about the quality. And you all, as Humphrey Fellows, Humphrey alumni, know this better than anyone. And I hope you get a chance to meet a fellow, I don't know what the gender-neutral term is, or fella, or a woman or a man who's been part of the Humphrey program, and that you get to know each other. Because this network is as much about Indians knowing Indians as it is Americans getting to know Indians and Indians getting to know America.